All right, we're going to be continuing our series entitled Relationship Masterclass. And it's based off this idea where accomplished experts in certain arenas of life teach their craft. And like right now, if you go on to MasterClass, you have to pay a subscription or something. But if you go online, you can have Steph Curry teach you how to shoot a basketball. You can have Carlos Santana teach you how to play guitar. You can have James Patterson teach you how to write. You can have Howard Schultz, the CEO of Starbucks, teach business leadership. I mean, the list goes on and on. It's the who's who of who. And it plays off this idea that if I'm going to learn, like, why not learn from the best? Why not learn from the master, right? Someone who has been there, someone who has done it, and they have succeeded. And here comes the point where you look at me and you kind of squint your eyes and you say, well, who are you? Well, I'm not an expert. I'm not a master. But this morning is not about the wisdom of Jeff, because if that was the case, you would leave here hugely disappointed because I got nothing. Rather, Jesus is the master. He is the ultimate relationship expert. He can build them from nothing. He can navigate the tough areas with ease. He can bring healing to hurt relationships. And he can help us with our relationships. Pastor Lance has talked a lot in the past few weeks about, he's talked about hiding in relationships. He's talked about listening. He's talked about policing. He's talked about even fighting. And this morning, I'm going to talk about boundaries in relationships. And now that is a very nice and tactful way of stating what we're going to talk about. But I'm really going to talk about the people that suck the life out of you. And you are so exhausted by it that you don't know what to do. Y'all still with me? Because some people are kind of challenging. Maybe they're needy, and they always have a problem for you to fix. Or maybe they crave your attention and they tend to overshare. Or maybe they're controlling and they dominate your time. They're just in your space. Listen, it is not unbiblical, it is not unloving to restrict a relationship or even to renegotiate a relationship. It's not unbiblical to have boundaries. It's not unloving, it's not unkind. Boundaries are biblical. Boundaries are biblical. Psalms 1:1 says this, "Blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked or stand in the way of sinners or sit in the seat of mockers." Sounds like boundaries to me. This fellow who wants to be blessed has decided that there are some people that I can't be around and retain my rightful position in God. There are some people I can't give access to my heart and my dreams, or they will deter my destiny. It's a boundary, and it's biblical. There was a dad whose daughter came to him and said, "Dad, I found the fellow that I'm going to marry." And the dad was surprised because this was like literally the first time he was hearing about it. And so he said, "If that's true, then I want to meet him." She says, "Well, actually, I've already scheduled the meeting. He's going to come by tomorrow, and you guys can talk, and you can have your interview." Tomorrow comes, the young fella shows up, and they small talk for a little bit, but soon the dad says, I hear that you and my daughter are getting serious. And so I got some questions for you. And the young fella says, "Fire away, I got no secrets." The dad asks, first off, what do you do? Like, what's your direction in life? Do you have a career? And the young fella says, "Not really. No, I don't work. I don't have a career. but God will provide. Now, when somebody says something like that, it kind of puts you in conflict. And it put this dad in conflict because, it makes you think, am I talking to an angel? Or am I talking to someone who needs a lot of medication? The God card is kind of hard to deal with. And so the dad says, okay, let's move to the next question. And he says, what are your assets? Do you have money in the bank? Do you have, property, stocks, bonds, real estate, whatever? What do you have? And the young fellow says, I don't have anything. I don't have money in the bank. I don't have stocks. I don't have bonds. I don't have real estate. I don't really own much of anything. But God will provide. And Dad's getting nervous. He says, okay, third question. What are your ambitions? What are your dreams? Do you have any goals? What do you aspire to become? And the young fellow said, I don't. To be honest, I really don't have any of those. I don't have any goals. I don't have any dreams. I don't have any aspirations. But guess what? God will provide, right? And so the meeting ends, and the young fellow leaves, and the dad's sitting in his lazy boy, with his feet up, and he's just traumatized. His wife walks in, and she goes, how'd it go? And dad says, well, there's some bad news, and there's some good news. The bad news, this fella has no job, no assets, no goals, nothing. Nothing. And the wife says, that's horrible. What's the good news? Well, there's some good news. What is it? He says, well, he thinks I'm God. Where's my dad's? So that might have hit a little closer to home for some of you than it was intended, but I mean, that's kind of how it goes sometimes, right? And that's kind of, an illustration of some of our crazy dysfunctional relationships when you're in a relationship with someone who expects you to be God, who expects you to take the responsibility for some area of their life that they should be taking responsibility in. Be God in my money because I got financial problems and you just solve them. Be God in my personality because I got kind of a quirky personality and you fix it. Be God in my failures. I've got lots of problems. You solve them. Be God in the fact that I can't get a job because I have a low work ethic and you find me something. Be God in my emotional issues. The problem is it makes you crazy when you're around people like that because it should make you crazy. God never intended for you to be God for somebody else or take the responsibility for their life. And so as we talk about this today, what I want you to do is I want you to get that one person. Maybe there's more, but just do one. I want you to find that one person, and I want you to have them in your brain this morning, because what's going to happen is you will think about that relationship as we talk about this, and it will really help you make sense of this. So here's the question right now as we're talking. Who is asking you to be God? Who is asking you to take care of their financial problems? Who is asking you to take care of their emotional problems, their unhappiness? Who is demanding that you take too much responsibility for them? Because it never works. There is a better way. Look what Solomon says in Proverbs 4:23. He says, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. What is your heart? Well, in Hebrew, the heart is the inner person. The core values are in your heart. Your feelings are in your heart. Your emotions are in your heart. Your thoughts, your decisions, they're all in your heart. And here we're called to protect it, to look after it, to shield it, to preserve it, to take care of it, to guard our heart. And if someone is telling you to take care of their life and it's making you crazy and they're in your space because you're trying to do your stuff and their stuff, it's probably because you're not guarding your heart the right way. See, God has designed two elements for healthy relationships, and like most things, it's a balance. The first is grace. 1 Peter 4:10 says this, each of you should use whatever gift you've received to serve others as faithful stewards of God's grace in its various forms. See, grace is basically the reality that God is for you. He is on your side no matter what. Grace means there's nothing that I can do to make God happy so he'll love me more. He won't love me anymore if I perform well. And on the other hand, grace says that there's no way I can screw up and he'll love me any less. That's the nature of grace. And grace comes in two forms, right? First, it comes vertically, straight from God. It comes from his word, the Bible. It comes from the Holy Spirit, his presence dwelling in us. But then it comes this way, horizontal, where we take grace from each other and we give grace to each other. And that's what the passage in 1 Peter is talking about, that we're supposed to be stewards. We're actually the delivery system for the very grace of God. And when somebody listens to you, when someone listens to you and you tell them your story and they are for you and they don't judge you and they don't condemn you, you are experiencing grace. Relationships that have grace are great relationships. You know why? It's because you're safe. There's no condemnation. There's no judgment. Rather, when we are judged and we're condemned, we shut down, we pull away. But when you're safe, you open up, and that's what grace is all about. The second part of great relationships is truth. Ephesians 4:15 says this, instead, speaking truth in love, we will grow to become, in every respect, the mature body of him who is the head, that is, Christ. Truth is what's real. There's truth of physics and gravity. There's truth we find in the Bible. There's truth that a wise person tells us that we didn't know. There's truth of feedback that we get from those we do business with or that we're married to. And it's like this. Grace provides the safety that we need, and truth provides the structure that we need. Grace says, I love you no matter what. Truth says, I need to give you some feedback so you don't ruin yourself. We need grace, and we need truth. When grace and truth are together, things go better. It is a law of relational, physics. But unfortunately, things can go wrong. Relationships can get out of balance because you may have someone in your life who is out of control. You may have someone in your life who is out of control. Romans 13:13 says, let us behave decently as in the daytime, not in carousing and drunkenness, not in sexual immorality and debauchery, not in dissension and jealousy. When you got someone who is out of control, this is where someone's behavior and someone's attitude is like off the charts. They're impulsive, they act out, and they're destructive to relationships. Why? Because they trample on grace, they take advantage of it, and they don't listen to the truth. The best example of this is a relationship, if you have a relationship with someone who is an addict. If you have a relationship with an addict, then you understand everything that I'm saying. Because an addict is imprisoned by something, whether it be alcohol or drugs or pornography or substance or some behavior. And everything in life centers around that thing. And what happens is if you love that person, you will start to take responsibility for their problem and their pain and their emotions and their addictions, and you take on the role of trying to fix them and enable them and rescue them, and it's called codependency. And it's horrible. because they don't get better and you get worse. I've known people over the years with drinking problems. How do I know? Well, every time they drink, they get drunk. They don't think they have a drinking problem. They think they have a nagging husband or a nagging wife problem. And that was the case with this one lady. She had a husband who had a drinking problem, and she had a 4-point strategy to deal with it. The first thing she would do is she would be the designated driver. She would go with her husband. She would watch him get drunk. And she would be the safe ride home. Sounds like a great night, right? Second part of her strategy was to leave Celebrate recovery materials around the house. Because there's nothing that an addict likes to read than Celebrate recovery materials. Especially if they're in denial. Like, oh wow, I'm wrecking my life. I'm probably going to die early. This is great. Can you get me some more of this? The third part of her plan was to text her husband a couple times a day to see if he's drinking. It's 3 o'clock. Are you drinking? Isn't that a great text? As if you were going to heal them with a text. It's so transformative. And her fourth plan was, well, he lost his job due to his drinking. And her fourth step was to get a second job so that she continued to pay the mortgage so he wouldn't feel bad and they could keep the house. Ultimately, didn't work. Because that's not the way God's relationships work. And so relationships can get out of balance because you have someone in your life who is literally out of control. But the other problem relationship here is someone who controls. Someone who controls other people. You have a relationship with someone who is controlling you or attempting to control you. Nobody should ever control you. You need choices. Galatians 5:1, Paul says this, "It is for freedom that Christ has set us free. Stand firm then and do not let yourselves be burdened again by a yoke of slavery." See, one of the many benefits of Jesus' death on the cross is through his death, we have choices now. You should have a voice in your relationships. You should have a voice to be able to say what's true. You should be free to choose where you spend your money. You should be free to choose where you want to go on vacation. You should be free to voice what's important to you and what your opinion is. You should be free in saying, this is how I want to be respected. And you should be free in saying, this is how I want to be loved. I'm not going to be loved the way you want to love me because it hurts. I need to be free in saying, this is how I want to be loved. Christ died for that. But there are people that don't want you to have that freedom. And so you go along to get along. And you do it their way, but if you have another opinion, things blow up. And it is a hard life to be around someone who is a control freak, not controlling themselves, but controlling you. And they control a couple different ways. One of the ways people control is through anger. Another way people control is through guilt. Anger controllers say, if you don't do it my way, I'll be mad at you. I will escalate. I will blow up. I'll use bad words. I might even get violent. I'm going to have a tantrum if you don't do it my way. It is control by anger, and it is very, very powerful. Guilt controllers say, if you don't do it my way, I'll be hurt. I'm not mad. I'm just hurt. Very, very powerful. It's like the fellow who decided to take his family on vacation, but this time, because of time constraints, he wasn't going to swing by and see his mom. And when he called her to let her know, she said, "Do you even know how long I was in labor with you?" She's not angry. She's just hurt. So whether you have an out-of-control person in your life, someone who tries to control you through anger, someone tries to control you through guilt, you don't have a balanced relationship. And it's not good, and God never intended it. So let's get to the answer. And this is really where boundaries come in. Boundaries are not meant to be mean. They're not unkind. Simply put, a boundary is a property line. A boundary is a property line. You know, I share with you guys, a number of years back, I had a neighbor who was doing some stuff on, our property line goes like right here, and there's grass, a little patch of grass on his side and a little patch of grass on my side, and he wanted to rip up all of his grass and do something with it. And so I come home one day, and all of my grass is ripped up. And I'm like, I thought that was mine. There's a property line. It's a boundary. So that means that ultimately, that right there is my decision on what happens with that. Right? So a property line, you know, basically says this is your plumbing, and this is your electrical, and this is your stuff, and then over here, this is my electrical, and this is my plumbing and my stuff. So if something goes wrong with my plumbing, you know, it's my problem. I got to fix it. I got to figure it out. If something goes wrong in my neighbor's plumbing, I might go over and help him, but ultimately, it's my neighbor's responsibility. That's what a boundary is. Guard your heart. Your heart is the boundary line. A boundary protects everything inside. So how do we set boundaries in our lives and our relationships? The first is love others without rescuing them. Love them without rescuing them. You see, loving and rescuing are two very different things. Rescuing and enabling and codependency are not the same as love. Love says, I'm on your team. Love says, I'm on your side. But I'm not going to fix your problems. Galatians 6:2-5 says, carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ. Each one should carry their own load. Now let's talk about this. Because aren't we supposed to go the extra mile? Aren't we supposed to give to those in need? Like, that's the Christian life. Sacrifice is part of it. And he says here, carry each other's burdens. Carry other people's burdens, right? And then carry your own load. Okay, so I got to carry their stuff and all my problems. I got to carry their problems and my problems. Okay, why am I getting up in the morning? But in the Greek, it actually doesn't say that. The word burdens translates into boulders. A back-crushing boulder that you cannot carry. Here's a boulder. A divorce. Somebody's going through a divorce, they're under a boulder. Medical condition. The loved one's terminally ill. You had major surgery. That's a boulder. A financial issue. The house goes under. You lose a job. You're foreclosed on. That's a boulder. We're supposed to carry each other's burdens. When they're facing a boulder, for a period of time until they can handle things on their own. That's not what the word load means. In the last part of that passage, the word load does not mean boulder. The word load means backpack. Your backpack is the stuff that you need for your day. In your backpack, you got your feelings. You got your thoughts. You got your values, the stuff of your heart. And life goes well when we help other people with their boulders, but we don't take care of their backpack. Life goes poorly when we start picking up other people's backpacks. God never intended you to fix someone else's emotional problems, to fix somebody's financial problems, to fix somebody's bad attitude. I mean, how many of you have tried to make an unhappy person happy? To make a miserable person, turn that frown upside down. Like, how does that work? Anyone have some amazing success stories? It doesn't happen. You end up both being unhappy. And if you're wondering if you are loving or you are rescuing, here's the question to ask. Is this something that they should be doing themselves? And if the answer is yes, you're not loving. So we set boundaries in our lives by loving without rescuing. And we also set boundaries in our lives by learning to confront and love. In other words, learn to tell the truth in love. Jesus tells us in Matthew 18:15, if your brother and sister sins, go and point out their fault just between the two of you. If they listen to you, you have won them over. In other words, go have the tough talk. We need each other to tell the truth. You have blind spots. I have blind spots. And one of the functions of a relationship is to say, hey, you missed a spot. You may not be aware of your tone of voice. You may not be aware of your behavior. You may not be aware of how you are affecting people. This is how we're supposed to love each other. Love involves truth. And what you're saying to this person is, I'm not trying to beat you up. I'm not trying to judge you. I want a better relationship. This is about a better us. I want a better us. I need to tell you the truth because of us. You're not a project to me. And it's not about selfishness when we tell the truth. It's about stewardship, because when I confront in love, it's not about me. It's about a healthy me, and it's about a healthy you and a healthy us. I'm trying to be a steward because God's got something for me to do. And if I'm pouring my life down the drain with someone who doesn't want to respond, and I'm trying to fix them and enable them and rescue them, listen, God has a plan for me that I never had time to do because I was out here rescuing. So now the bigger issue is stewardship. How am I spending my time? In Matthew 16:23, Jesus lays down a boundary. Sweet Jesus, in a picture, he's sitting down, he's petting a lamb, and in between playing the harp. This sweet Jesus? This is what he says one time to Peter. Peter told him that he doesn't think he should go to the cross. And Jesus turns around and says, "Get behind me, Satan." This is what he says to Peter. Well, one of the 12. "Get behind me, Satan. You are a stumbling block to me. You do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns." And we read that and we go, oh my gosh. I can't believe Jesus said that. Peter. Poor Peter. Jesus must not have liked Peter very much. Maybe Jesus didn't really love Peter that much. No, he did love Peter. He stuck with him through his denials. He stuck with him through his failure. When Peter cut off one of the ears of one of the guards that came to kill him, Jesus stopped and put it back on. He didn't fire him. He let him preach on the day of Pentecost. When it came to the will of the Father, though, Jesus said, Peter, I don't care how convincing you are, how much I love you, but not you, not James, not John. Nobody is standing between me and the will of my Father. So you got to get behind me with that foolishness. That's a boundary that Jesus made very clear. And so if you're calling me up and you're inviting me to go do stuff that I know I shouldn't be doing, I'm not taking your calls anymore, because every time you call me, you're inviting me to do something outside of the will that God has established for my life. That is a boundary. And so we set boundaries in our lives by loving without rescuing, learning to confront and love. And so let's get a little more practical as we kind of wrap this up. Things that you can put in your life today that will help you create healthy boundaries in your life. Start from a position of love. Start from a position of love. Start from a position of, I want this person to win. I may be bugged with them right now. They may be making me frustrated and crazy. By the way, you can love someone without liking them. Did you know that? Some of you are like, I am writing that down. Just don't put their name in your notes, okay? You don't have to like someone who's unlikable, but you have to love them. John 13:34, a new command I give you. It's a command, it's not negotiable. Love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. Think about it. God loved us when we were totally unlovable, and we're supposed to love them when they're unlikable. And so you don't start off with, I am going to fix them, I'm going to change them, I'm going to punish them. You start off with, I want the best. I want the we, the work we, the marriage we, the dating we, the friend we. The we's not working, and I love you. You must start with love. The second practical step is say no when it's best to say no. There is a time you need to say no. You need to say it. It's a good word to say. Jesus said to say it. Matthew 5:37, he said, all you need to say is simply yes or no. Anything beyond this comes from the evil one. The reality is, if you have a hard time saying no, then you are a great target for telemarketers. Right? Vicki doesn't like this, but I'm one of those weird people that picks up the phone. I answer it. You know, Vicki's like, oh, it's a telemarketer, and doesn't answer. I'm like, ooh, I'll get it. And I talk to them. The most recent one that they call me is they ask if I'm interested in selling my home. And I say, yeah. And they go, well, how much are you asking? $1 million. Cash only. And at first they start to engage me in conversation, the rookies. Now, once I start talking about it, they just hang up on me. They hang up on me. It's awesome. The word no is a good word. God says use it. It is healthy. But sometimes when you say no, you have to deal with the secondary question. Because sometimes when you say no, people don't accept it. And they'll come back and they'll say, Why? And you got to be careful, because sometimes when they ask why, what they're really trying to do is to solve your problem for you. So whether it's time or money or energy or whatever, here's what you say. That doesn't work for me. It just doesn't work for me. It's nice. It's not mean. And it kind of closes the conversation. Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't do that. It just doesn't work for me. That tone of voice that you're using when talking to me, that just doesn't work for me. Those hurtful words that you used, that doesn't work for me. Your inappropriate behavior doesn't work for me. It is not unbiblical. It is not unloving to restrict a relationship, to renegotiate a relationship. The first is you got to love them. The second is you got to use your words. And the third is give consequences if necessary. Sometimes you got to give consequences. Sometimes you got to go beyond saying no to doing no. You got to have actions. Proverbs 19:19 says this, a hot-tempered person must pay the penalty. Rescue them, and you'll have to do it again. I don't like to do work twice. Is anyone else in that camp? This is what he's saying. If you keep doing it this way, the way you're doing it, you're going to have to keep doing it over and over and over and over and over again. If you've ever had someone who has had anger management issues in their life, they will train you and you will train them that if they want to get something from you, all they got to do is get mad and you will give them anything that they want. The Bible says don't do it. Don't do it. But there is a certain percentage of the population that disregards your words. They disregard your vulnerability when you say, this hurts me. They disregard your warnings when you say, this is going to go bad. They disregard your steps to health. They disregard anything that you say. Did you know that? What they're saying is, I don't care about your words. Words don't change me. The only thing that changes me is pain. They're telling you that words don't count. The Bible calls them foolish. Don't be a foolish person. Let words change you. Don't let pain change you. You can stop the pain. But there are some people that say, it's got to be pain. And so they have just given you a path. And just like your 3-year-old needs a timeout sometimes. I mean, when a 3-year-old doesn't listen to your words, what do? You remove them from the situation and you give them a timeout. There's a lot of adults. I feel like I don't even need to say what I'm about to say. There's a lot of adults who are like 3-year-olds on the inside, and they are just asking for the pain. I don't care what you're going to say. It doesn't matter. You can talk as long as you're going to talk. You can say it over and over and over and over. I'm not listening to you. I only listen to pain. Now, it's not mean. But what's the pain? The pain is something like this. If you continue in this behavior, I'm going to leave the room. If you continue this behavior, I might have to leave the house. If you continue talking to me that way, I'm going to hang up the phone. If you continue behaving this way, I'm not going to be able to give you my money or my time or my energy or my heart. It just doesn't work for me. It's not easy, but it's simple. And so you can create healthy relationships, and it works. But you got to have boundaries. You see, restoration can be a reality. In 2 Corinthians 13:11, it says, "Finally, brothers and sisters, rejoice. Strive for full restoration. Encourage one another. Be of one mind. Live in peace, and the God of love and peace will be with you." God is with you, and He wants to help you in your relationships. And this room is peppered with stories of restoration, and I believe that God is not done yet. I believe that God still loves the restoration story. So as we wrap up our time together and the worship team comes, would you stand with me? I want to share with you one last thought. When people are in our space, and it's challenging, and it's frustrating, and things get kind of dysfunctional and crazy, as much as you are dealing with the other person, we got to make sure that we put down the magnifying glass and we pick up the mirror. Because it's hard for us to see stuff in ourselves. That's why David had to say, "Hey, God, search me. You know my heart. You know my thoughts. See if there is any offensive way in me. And lead me in the way of everlasting." And once you realize that you're not a superhero and designed to deal with everybody's dysfunction and fix everyone else and clean up all the lives around you, when you realize that, it doesn't beat you down. It sets you free. And you begin to realize that the same Jesus who loved you through your dysfunction, who, by the way, still loves you, present tense, through your current dysfunction, wants to love other people through you in their dysfunction. And that is how we touch a life. That's the way we relate to one another. You can see transformation. You can see reconciliation. You can see restoration. And maybe this morning, you have some exhausting, needy, controlling, unhealthy relationships that are all up in your space. And maybe you're trying to be patient. But remember this, God is on your team. God is on your side. And He wants you to have the hard talk. He wants you to have the hard talk, and He'll teach you how to do it. And He wants you to love them. And He'll give you the grace to do that. And He wants you to set limits with your behavior. That will help them. And that's where the miracles happen. That's where the miracles happen.